I get a thumbs up. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to GlasgowJS. Nice to see everyone back after summer. We hope you've had a really lovely time. That's kind of it. Cool to see everyone here. Thank you to, well, I meant that in good faith. Thank you to Barclays Eagle Labs, as ever, for hosting us. It makes all the difference to have a really cool and just hospitable place to hang out in and have pizza and hear about tech. So it's always good. And that's kind of it, really. Not much more ado. I'm being told to get more hype into the room. So could we get a massive round of applause for Jamie, who's going to give our first talk about portfolios? Woo!
Thank you, Victoria. Hi, everybody. Good to see you all again. So yeah, we had a little bit of a break, and I thought I would kick off the year with a little talk about making personal websites, which is a topic that is dear to my heart. I keep on banging on about this. So I thought I'd spend 15, 20 minutes talking a little bit about what I do, and then showing how you too can implement a personal website very quickly in roughly 15 minutes in a framework called Astro. So I've been running my website, personal website. I've had the domain name for, I don't know, a long time, I guess 10 years, 15 years, maybe longer. And I regularly update it. I've got a few things in there. I've got month notes, I've got a journal, I've got a little bit about dev stuff, some reading stuff, some running stuff, basically just things that I'm into that I kind of want to put online or kind of collect in that way that tech people sometimes like collecting things. So why have I done this? So I'm a freelancer, been freelancing for about 15 years. And one of the key ways that having a personal website helps me out is it reminds people that I exist. It's amazing, like, you know, people are, oh, you know, what should I do to get business and stuff like that? I post photos of me on walking holidays, and people are, oh yeah, you do web stuff, and I just saw your walking holiday photos. By the way, I know someone who needs a web app done. And that's happened to me several times. So I think when people come to me in advice and sort of say, you know, oh, I'm looking for a job, or I'm looking to get into freelancing, you know, but I need to make this perfect portfolio website. I don't think that's true. I think the best thing is to have a website rather than no website. A website that exists is better than a website that doesn't. And you don't need to do a lot on it. You don't need to showcase, you know, everything that you do. You just need to kind of remind people that you're there. Particularly for front-end roles. A lot of people ask me for advice on front-end roles, and I say, oh, can you send me a link to your website? They don't have one. I would say, you know, my personal opinion is that that's kind of minimum bar. Like if you're looking to make web stuff, make a website. It shows that you can ship stuff. Connects with like-minded people. You know, people know what I'm into, so people will talk to me about things. It's an outlet for learning new things. It's been through a few iterations. I switched to Astro this year. It was Next.js last year. Before then, I can't even remember what it was. It was in, you know, whatever framework was good at the time. And it's a record of what I've done. So I own my own data. I download all my reading stuff. I download runs or whatever, and I put it into text files so that even if services that I rely on shut down, I've still got copies of all the data. So let's dive into making a website in Astro. So what does our site need? Well, basically, this whole thing can be broken down into a home page, some content. You know, I've got my month notes. Those are just pages on the website, some nice styles, and then some feeds. I say feeds is quite important. I run ScottishTechnology.club. The way I keep track of what people are posting is via their YouTube channels or their blog feeds. If you don't have a feed, it's kind of hard for people to remember to kind of visit your page. So I think that's kind of an essential thing to put in. So let's dive into it. What I would say is, as I go through this, is that you should check out the documentation for Astro at astro.build. The documentation is wonderful, very well maintained, lots of instructions, and they've got lots of helpful tools like this, so you can create a new project quite easily. So this is just going to create a new project at Purple Planet. I want an empty project. Let's not write TypeScript right now. I want to install my dependencies, and I can't be able to initiate Git. So this is just going to go ahead and initialize that project for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through creating a home page. We're going to create a sample of content in a content folder, and then I'm going to show you how the Astro way of kind of getting that onto your site. So cool, that's installed. So I'm just going to, it was Purple Planet, and then I will do npm run dev. So that has booted me a localhost server, and wow, that's an incredible start. So basically if I just purple planet and then code, load up code, and I will make this bigger. Can people see that? Is that good? Cool. So an Astro website starts. There's an Astro config file. This is where you might import modules and other plugins for the Astro system. You've got a source folder, and in that, you've got a pages folder, and in that, you've got an index file. So Astro uses file-based routing. So if you want something to live at the root, you put an index page in. If you want something to live at about, you'd put about.astro. How many people here have used Astro before? Just a little show of hands. Cool. So I'll just go over like some of the language or some of the templating features. So up top in this Astro file, what you can see is there's two little code blocks. So anything in here gets run on the server or at build time. So I'm going to generate a static site, but you can also run Astro as a kind of like a standard kind of server where the files are kind of on demand. So anything in between here you can think of as server, and stuff in here you can think of as rendered to the client. And it's basically, at this point, just HTML. You can see you've got your heading there. That's what we see on the website. The cool thing about Astro is you can put script tags in here, so you can just write vanilla JavaScript in here, and that execute there. And also you can put style tags in here. H1, for example, let's just make that red, and that will update that. The cool thing about this is that it is scoped. So if I make a components folder and put in a heading.astro, what we can see is if we load this and I put a H1 here, another one, go back to the index, it will import that heading from heading. What you'll be able to see here is that the styles that I've put in this component are not picked up by the other heading components. So it makes it quite easy to compose things, to put styles and things. And I'd take a look at the Astro documentation to look at the scripting, because it tells you how there are various methods of inserting scripts and sort of selecting elements kind of in each web page. So that's quite a cool thing to know about Astro files, and it can help you compose together a basic website. But I will get rid of that for now. So the first thing that we need to do is let's create some content. So in our content folder, I'm going to create a place for a blog. And in that blog, I'm going to create markdown files. So let's just do a hello world, hello world.markdown. And for those not familiar with Markdown, it's a very easy way of writing sort of text-based files. This is called the front matter up top. And let's just put a date of 2024, 0901. So let's make two files just so we can show looping over things. Secondpost.md. And up here, some front matter. Title is second, and date, let's put that as today, 24/09/10, and close that off, and I'll just generate some lorem ipsum to put in there. Cool. So that is us generated our front matter and our content. So I've written some posts, and the other cool thing, let's just do in the hello world post, is I'm going to do some code, JS const hello equals world. And then, so this is kind of standard Markdown format for delineating things. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that. World, right. Cool. So that's that done. We now need to define the content collection. So Astro has some built-in functions in order for us to tell it where to find the content and kind of what structure that comes in. So we can switch over in our content directory, just in the root of that, whoops, not a new folder, I want a new file, and that's the config file. So just in here, I'll talk you through. We've got a define collection from Astro, so that's the helper function that lets us define what collection of Markdown files are. So if we look at my website, I've got a collection for month notes, I've got a collection for journal entries, I've got a collection for dev. One of the reasons that I do this is it kind of takes the pressure of, oh, I need to maintain my blog. You can do like, oh, I'm just going to do a series of 5 posts on this niche topic or whatever, or like this holiday that I'm on or whatever, and it kind of rounds it off and takes the pressure off you for actually producing the website. So it's quite nice to define a few content collections. So this is type content, and then Z just passes through to the library Zod, which some of you may have used before. So that just defines kind of content schemas. So what this is saying is it will load the Markdown files from the folder that we specify, And then for the front matter, it will apply that schema to any of the front matter. So if it is in the front matter but is not in the schema, it won't come through. But if it's in the schema, it will be type validated and it will be available to you in autocomplete or wherever if you're using TypeScript. So the last thing to do is we're exporting this collections variable. Now, as you know, the shorthand is just same as, we're exporting the blog variable, and blog is the key for the folder that it is in. So that is us imported that collection of markdown files. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to now display them on our home page. So we want links from the home page through to our blog. So just on the kind of server fence, we are using the get collection function from the Astro content package. We're loading that collection into a variable called all blog posts. Now what Astro does is it just loads everything that you've got into those variables, and then essentially you can use JavaScript to sort them, filter them, map them, whatever you want with them. They are doing some optimizations at the moment for loading collections from different sources. So after this, I recommend you go away and look at the documentation for the release notes for 4.14. There's some quite cool stuff with being able to load external sources. So if you've got a web feed somewhere, you can pull that down and kind of combine it and use it as a collection. So it kind of caches the stuff for you. So there's a lot of optimizations going on under the hood for that kind of thing. And then the next thing is just basically, if you do anything in React or any other framework, you'll recognize this syntax. It's just little braces, sorting the collection by the timestamp for each date. So that's coming through as a date from the front matter, and then mapping through the post, spitting out a list item. Standard links, there's no sort of framework links like some of the other frameworks. It's just all standard HTML. The things to note here are post.slug is a special field that is generated from your file name, so that will be hello world or second post. And post.data is the object that contains the front matter from your markdown file. So for these markdown files, I'd expect to see title and I'd expect to see date, and those will be the correct types. So if we go back over to the page now, you can now see second and hello. So if I click those, 404, not found, we need to create the files that display those. So to create post pages, so you're either creating a static page at which you name it, or you want to create, tell Astro, hey, I want to generate a bunch of paths, and I want you to make a page at each of those paths. So what we're going to do is we're now going into pages, and in pages I'm going to create a folder called posts, because that is where I'm linking to. And then in posts, we're going to create a file, and we're going to call it with square brackets slug.astro. So, in fact, if I get that the right way around. So that slug, what that means is expecting a variable called slug to be passed in there. And then I can just paste in between the code fences. Oops. I'll just do this properly. There's a TypeScript error here. I can write some TypeScript to make that go away. I think it might be a bug in Astro, but I'm not sure. But anyway, it just says it's render does not exist on the entry, but it does. So what you can see here is I'm importing the get collection again from Astro contents. This is exactly the same thing that we used on the home page. We're exporting a function called get static paths. So what that expects is it's returning an array and expects the params to contain the variable of the file name with the value of that variable. So here we're saying we're using slug. The slug is the entry slug. So it will go away and it will generate for each of our slugs, for each of our posts, it will generate a new page. And then we pass props into the page that's generated, and that is the entry, which is one of our blog posts. So then in the Astro file down here underneath, this is what's being run on each individual file. We get the entry from the props. Astro props is the kind of where those live, and then each entry comes with a render method that gives you the content. So what I can do here is I can do something like h1 and then do entry.data.title, and we're going to get the same error, and I will fix it at some point, but not right now. What that should do is you can see in here, if I make this a bit bigger, you'll see our Hello World post with Hello World, and then a little code block, because I want to illustrate that Astro comes with built-in code highlighting. So if you're like, oh, I want a place to share my code, this will do this quickly. Now, you can see this looks kind of pants, so let's make some stylings. The first thing we need to do is if we look, there's no HTML or stuff around it. It is basically just the HTML that we've returned in the Astro file there. So the first thing to do is to make a layout that we can extract for each of the pages. So I'm just going to make a layout Astro file. And in here, I'm just going to take from the index, I'm going to take kind of all this stuff up here, paste it in there, and all the stuff underneath it, just the end of the body, and put that in there. Now, in order to get the content here, we're just going to import the file, so import the layout, that's imported, and then put that there. In order to get the content here into the layout, Astro provides slot, and slot will slot the content into where you want. So if I just go back to the home page, that's rendering as normal, and now in the slug, I can also render the layout. So if I import that, move that down the bottom, that should now have the HTML and stuff wrapped around it, which means in the layout, we can now do things like we can put in thing which is Jamie's website, and we can put in a link to the homepage, which is useful. Cool, so now if I go on to the second post, we've got Jamie's website and home up the top, and that's the same in both. Now this is super snappy because it's basically just HTML that's being generated, and when you publish it, it will compile the HTML and send it out. There are quite cool things that Astro has, like view transitions and stuff, so you can put them on your website to kind of map different parts of different pages so that the pages seem to reload nicely. I think the GlasgowJS website has that, so you can see it just looks really nice. Right, next step, looks kind of terrible, so let's add some tailwind to it. So I'm just going to go back to terminal, so npx astro add, and then it's tailwind. How many people here have used Tailwind before? Cool. Nice little helper function here, installing Tailwind. I just want to illustrate there are quite a lot of nice packages that, I'm installing this, it's installed the package, it's added my configuration file, which is nice, and then I want to npm install dev dependency Tailwind CSS. So if you're looking to use CMS or something like that, Astro has quite a lot of integrations that will just step you through what you need to do. You run npx astro add an integration name, and it will work quite nicely. So there, it's created the Tailwind config for me. I just want to import the import typography from Tailwind typography, add that to my plugins, and then now in layout, kind of lazily, I can just round here, say put thing that should probably be called main or something, but let's just ignore that for now. Pros for Tailwind, I don't know if people have used the Tailwind Pros plugin, but it's super nice, MX Auto. And then if we go back to our homepage, you can now see you're going to start getting nice formatting, the headings are the right size, the paragraphs are the right size. And if we go back to the homepage, up here, you can see the links aren't styled. You can do things with pros where you do pros, A is like text, blue 700 or whatever. So then that will go down into the pros and do things like that. So that is essentially making the blog collection. So now, obviously, I can make it look a lot nicer, but we're not actually a million miles away from this, right? So then the next thing to do is to add an RSS feed. That, yet again, there's a package for that. So we are just going to install the RSS. Then what we want to do is we then want to create a new file. That file is the XML feed that your RSS lives in. So let's do feed .xml and then give it a JS extension. So it's going to be executed as JS, but we'll return XML. So in here, we're just importing from the package. We're defining a function. You want when the file, has a GET request against it, return the RSS, and then here are some fields in the object that the package expects. It expects a title, expects a description, expects a site. So in the context.site, what I need to do in my config is just define a site. Because it requires absolute links. So it will build those from whatever is in the context site. So you'll need to set something in there to generate properly. And then getting stuff out into the feed is as simple as what we've done on the other pages. So just inside that request, if I move that up top, I'm importing the get collection, yet again, querying all blog posts, going through the items, I'm sorting, I'm mapping, RSS expects title, pub date, and link to the correct thing, and then I can just return the items there. So if I now go here to the feed, you'll now see the XML feed. So I can now place that as a link kind of in my footer or whatever. So down here, I could be like footer, and then href. I could put in the meta tags as well, but feed.xml, and then feed, so people know about it, which I should save. Yeah, cool, and then that's actually a link, so that goes through. So that is, I think, probably about 15 minutes worth of stuff to get a blog up and running. So now we're done. There's a couple more things I want to say is that Astro are doing some great work with loading stuff into content collections. So I just want to show you a couple of examples from my website that one might be interesting to you as developers, but also kind of illustrate the power of some of these things. So if we go to the dev page, I haven't written that much in the dev page. Life is busy, but there we are. I've got some stuff about the meetups, but I've also got a collection of personal websites that I like. So I've got, I don't know if people have used it, Arena. It's kind of like Pinterest for hipsters, I guess. Whenever I find a cool website that I like, I just shove that in the content collection there. They've got some, it's either XML or JSON, I can't remember, but I just load that and shove it out onto the page. You can do that as part of a content collection with the new Astro content layer. So if you've got stuff kind of going on around the web, your website can kind of automatically update with stuff as you add to it. And it's stuff like this that someone added me on LinkedIn the other day and be like, oh, I see you like my website. Like, cool, okay, let's connect. Then I asked him some questions about what he did in his website. So that goes back to what I was saying at the start about having a personal website helps you connect with people. So that's the end of the dev stuff. I want to say I've got an open offer, so I'm running, helping run these meetups, and I do ScottishTechnology.club bulletin for events and stuff, but I also feature people's content. If you make a website and if you publish even the shortest blog post saying, here's something I learned today, or like, it doesn't need to be fancy, I'll put it in the newsletter. I will let people know about it. I think our community works if we're talking and sharing. That's why I do this, and this is kind of why I did the talk. And that's the end. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Astro personal websites, yeah. Can we just wait for the microphone so the live stream people can?
Hi there. You mentioned you're a freelance developer. Can you walk us through how to be a freelancer in terms of acquiring clients and how the process works from the start?
Yeah, sure. So I started freelancing about 15 years ago. I worked for something entirely unrelated to tech, but the job was weirdly chopped up that I could quit a day here or there. Like, there wasn't anything they could do about it. So I was like, cool, I'm quitting Fridays. And then I worked that day plus a little bit of the weekend. So I gradually ramped up. I started years ago doing WordPress conversions, where WordPress was like the thing that everybody wanted. So I worked for, not directly for, but for a couple of marketing agencies who like the clients on their old sites who need them converted to WordPress, and I basically just churned them. Like over and over, the same kind of thing. But that got me experience and just went to networking events. I mean, you might meet people here. I know there's certainly some people at EdinburghJS who've got work because they asked me if I had any work and people asked me if I knew any developers, so I just connected them. I wasn't able to rate them. I was like, I don't know this person, but they're looking. I think it's quite difficult to get started unless you're super experienced and you've got some contacts. I'd recommend starting slowly, doing side projects and like telling people what you're doing. Like not just having a portfolio website, but like you need to be so explicit. I'm like, I am looking for work. Here's what I want to do. And then just find excuses to get your face in front of people again.
Okay, so what if you can't do the work? As in like you build a web project and someone is confident enough to give you a role and then you kind of like stuck. Would you like get a few friends to get you help?
Like, I mean, the Discord server for the meetup group, a fine place to ask. I don't think anyone's going to be like, if people are like, hey, I've taken on this job and there's this thing and I don't know what it is, like, that's happened to me. I was doing a job where I was optimizing some like stuff on like a canvas and like then some 3D stuff, and I messaged some people who'd done some previous talks at Edinburgh JS. I was like, am I mad here? But where should I be looking? I don't even know where to start, because it was such a niche thing. They helped me out. I think, like, don't take jobs that you know you can't do.
Yeah,
but it's probably okay to be slightly outside your comfort zone, and you'll kind of need that to kind of make progress. And I think doing stuff like this and showcasing what you can do, because a lot of my clients, a lot of what I do is like prototyping, so sometimes it makes it to market, sometimes I hand it over to them and sees the light of day in maybe 3 or 4 years' time. So I find doing this helps showcase that I can do stuff.
Yeah, it's just like do your work and showcasing you can do it, and try to see.
Like I can make websites. Use my website.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Well, I wasn't looking at who put up their hand first. So just.
Oh, thank you, sir. Very so the website you showed us was pretty basic looking, especially for like someone with your amount of experience. But do you find that that's actually important when you're like showcasing to clients or looking for
As
work?
in this?
Yes.
Yeah. Like the bar of like I have a website is something that a lot of people for some reason they have a shiny portfolio website. I think for me the type of work that I do, like I'm reasonably proactive. I'm like not looking to go into a big corporation do freelancing. So I tend to be like small startup-y projects, and I think like running the meetup helps. Like I think. I've got. I mean, I do actually have another business website, which is also an Astro, but it is even more basic.
I've noticed that. A lot of very.
Like that's my business website.
Okay.
Just get in touch. I think the bar of putting stuff out there and reminding people you exist, like I just can't emphasize that's the thing.
Yeah.
And if you can talk about it confidently, and if you don't deliver, they're not going to pay you, and you've lost. So make sure you can deliver. I think that's fine. I mean, like obviously every personal website is a work in progress, and there's a sleight of hand. You go, oh, it's my personal website. Yeah. I'm totally going to add the photos there at some point. But So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So obviously you landed on Astro, and I feel like there used to be a big push for static site generator for a long time, and it kind of died down. Stuff like Gatsby is kind of not used these days when it used to be very hot for a while. Astro's obviously kind of brought that back a little bit. What other static site generator have you used? And
I mean, the last one, so I've used Gatsby in a project, quite a large project. I've used Next.js on various projects. Next started as a kind of staticky site generator, which in fact they get static paths. It's the same kind of thing that's going on. I quite like the Astro way of doing it. That's it. Like other things I work on. I've tended to be projects that come in, so like React apps with Express backends or whatever. The reason I like Astro is that there's a thing called server islands. If you've not heard about this, server islands means that in here I could put a React component, I could put a Vue component, I could write my own web component and have them all on the same web page. And Astro will only deliver what's needed to render that web page to the client. So I can pick and choose kind of what frameworks I want for each individual page. So if in the future I decide to learn a different framework and Astro has an island architecture for it, I can learn that and put it in a little bit of my site. That kind of ties back to the make something that you can learn with. I don't think I've got the widest experience in the world, but I know enough and have done enough projects and enough things to learn wherever I need. If you want to know about server islands, Joe did a talk at Edinburgh JS, I think it was at the end of last year. If you go to the Scottish Technology Club YouTube channel and click on the live tab and go back through the live streams, we've got a live stream of that. It's a very good talk with a lovely demo, so I recommend checking that out.
There are questions over this way. Fine.
So I'm going to cheat and have 2 questions because I've now got the mic and nobody can take it off me. Great talk. That was great. First question was, you'd mentioned you were on Next.js before. You've moved to Astro now. Are you using your homepage as a bit of a test bed to learn new technologies, or do you feel like it's sort of, you saw something in Next.js previously, now you've seen something in Astro and you think you're going to kind of stick about on that? What are you using it for to grow, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so I mean, like the reason that I switched to Astro is one, I was interested in it. There was a bit of hype around it, and you know, like I'm as much of a fan as jumping on a bandwagon as anyone else, right? You're like, oh, cool, you know.
JavaScript after all.
Yeah, like it's the same thing. And the thing that I like about it is that I'd probably only stick to things that do stuff with folders and markdown. So like, you know, my website, I've now got like, I think is it like 60 something month notes, you know, like it's like, and the reading I've got like, you know, a couple hundred books in there. Like it's nice to have like text files that I can edit no matter, you know what, I'm not tied into, you know, like a content management system. I know if I was doing stuff for a client, I'd probably want a, I don't know, Contentful or Sanity or whatever. But for me, having them as text files means I can just check them all into Git and, you know, it's fast. I mean, I don't really need that much performance. But yeah, that's why I chose Astro. Maybe next year I'll rework it to something else. I don't know, we'll find out. So.
Cool. I mean, there's probably one just popped up just now as we've been speaking. And the kind of last question is somebody that puts out a lot of content, a kind of mixture as well sort of thing. Do you, like, from a working process, do you like dedicate time to that per week, or are you kind of doing it as and when, or like what's your kind of process personally?
I think I don't put out a lot of content, if I'm going to be honest. There's a difference between, right, so 64 month notes, seems a lot, it's 5 years of consistent posting, not missed a month. But I spend like, sometimes I spend 5 minutes being like, what did I do last month? Look at my Google Photos, hammer out a thing, you know, write some stuff about books that I read, and shove it up there. There's a difference between like consistency and like volume. And I think for me, like it's getting a consistent rhythm with month notes. I know that like within the first week of the month, I should sit down for 30 minutes and just find the time to do it. And I think consistency is the key to getting noticed. So if you're part of the Discord server, every week, or the newsletter, every week on Scottish Technology Club, I'm like, in terms of content, not that many people did things sometimes, but Loopshay posted a video on this topic. Like he joined the server and he had like, I remember like being like, hey, he's got 98 subscribers on YouTube. Now he's got 1,000. That's because he posts every week. Yeah. I don't know how long he spends in it, but like it's the consistency that matters, I think, and just a regular kind of rhythm. You know, I find this is enough to kind of keep me going. And also, I mean, I tweet about the meetups a lot, so yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have questions? Oh, no? Redacted. Any more questions for Jamie?
Awesome. I'd love to show you more stuff about Astro. If you've got any questions or if you build your own thing, I can even sit down, do a video call with you and help you. I want more people to have personal websites. So thank you for your time today, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you so much.
5-minute break.
Yeah, we're going to have a 5-minute break, so grab some beer, grab some pizza. We'll be back for a talk on the Scottish Tech Army, I believe. Oops. Okay, cool. Cool, welcome back. I hope everyone had some good beers. We've got a talk now from Alistair Forbes, who runs Scottish Tech Army, which I think some of us here are very familiar with as volunteers or just who've heard about it in the ether. So yeah, over to Alistair.
Thank you very much. Okay. Great. Good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to hear that we've got some of our volunteers in here. That's great. Do come up and say hello at the end. So yes, I'm Alistair Forbes. Was one of the founders and now CEO of the Scottish Tech Army. So for those of you who don't know, Scottish Tech Army is something that was launched in April 2020. So let me take you back in time, which is that 3rd of April 2020. We obviously were all in lockdown, and I was out doing my 1 hour of permitted daily exercise a day, and bumped into somebody I know, well, didn't bump into, that far apart, spoke to somebody who I know who runs a tech business in Edinburgh, and we were just talking about the impact that the pandemic and lockdown was having on their business. And obviously a lot of businesses were thinking about how it was going to affect their client base and their work, and were they going to have to put people on furlough and this kind of thing. So that was really the genesis of the idea for the Scottish Tech Army, which was to say, you know, there's a huge crisis that's going on. Lots of people would like to think, what can I do to help? What part can I play? And for most people, what that ended up meaning was that, you know, they would volunteer for something like the NHS. 450,000 people volunteer for the NHS. Unfortunately, the NHS can't use 450,000 people, and when they do, they're going to use them to push trolleys around, which was a very important thing to be doing, but it's not really tapping into the skills that all these people had. So that was really the idea in the first place, was to try and tap into the opportunity that existed to recruit volunteers with tech skills, to use those skills to help organizations that were really on the front lines of trying to deal with this, and a lot of them in the third sector, charities, non-profits. And for those of you who've had any experience in that sector, you'll know that there's generally very limited tech experience within these organizations. They don't have people who've got technology backgrounds, and they certainly don't have the funds to be able to go out and just hire somebody to do it. So that was the idea, and as is always the case when you start off with something that's new, you never know what's going to happen, whether it will take off or not. But it really did tap into something, the mood of the moment, if you like, and we had a fantastic response from people in the tech community. And I don't know when those of you who are volunteers signed up, but we had 150 volunteers on day one and 700 volunteers within the first month. So it really did kind of tap into the mood of that time. At the outset, we really had no idea, well, if it did take off, how long it could perform any kind of useful role, because it was very much a response to the pandemic. But what became obvious to us pretty quickly was that these organizations, this was just unmasking something that was a much deeper seated problem of that lack of technology expertise and the lack of funding. So that's really what convinced us that there was an opportunity to do something that would be longer term. And so it really is all about this catchphrase we use about mobilizing the UK's tech talent for good. It's giving people an opportunity to put their skills to work, to create social impact, social value, and thereby helping a lot of organizations that are doing really valuable work in society and the community. I'm sure every one of you will have come across some sort of charity that is doing something that matters to you personally, because you know somebody who's been affected by the issues that they're trying to solve. So it's a very committed and passionate community of people who do this kind of stuff. And so tapping into the passion and the talent within the tech sector is a really good match for that. So that's what convinced us that we would try and make this something that would be a longer term initiative. Obviously, there was not going to be any shortage of organizations that were looking for help. What we needed to be confident about was that there would be sufficient flow of new volunteers coming in to be able to continue to do the work. And that has also proved to be very resilient. So we've now had over 3,500 people who have signed up as volunteers over the total time we've been operating. And obviously not all of those have actually worked on something actively, but over 1,200 people have. And that's enabled us to support over 400 organizations across a really wide range of different types of cause and sector that they work in. The nature of the projects varies quite a lot. Obviously this is a developer group, so JavaScript skilled people. So that's certainly one class of projects that we do. But it's a huge range of things. I mean, sometimes, Jamie was talking about WordPress. We get a lot of requests for help with WordPress websites. So if anybody fancies keeping their hand in with WordPress, then that's all good too. But what we've seen over time is that a lot of charities, they were kind of forced into looking at technology during the pandemic because they just were not set up to do this, and it was a kind of wake-up call for them. So they had to try and do something about it. And there's one organisation, as an example, that we're working with, actually in partnership with Barclays. So sounds like a lot of you have heard of the Scottish Tech Army, which is fantastic. You may also have heard of the other thing we do, which is we run something called the Tech for Good Alliance, and that's about working with companies to tap into the skills of the people that they employ. Lots of companies give their people volunteering time, so that, you can do some volunteer work in company time. Generally speaking, those programs are very poorly taken up, and when they are taken up, people are not using their skills. They're doing unskilled manual labor, or they're doing a sponsored walk or whatever. So the Tech for Good Alliance is set up to work with companies to provide really meaningful opportunities for people to put those skills to work in very much the same way as we do with those individual volunteers. So the example I'm talking about here, Barclays this year decided that it was going to select as its charity partner for the Glasgow site, Scottish Action for Mental Health. So as I found out by talking to them in this context, that's an organisation that's been going for longer than the NHS. It was founded in the 1920s. It's done a phenomenal amount of work. It's obviously a bit dispiriting that there's an increasing need for the work that they do, but the work they do is absolutely fantastic. So that was a really good example. In the pandemic, they launched a service called Time for You, and that was designed to help provide mental health support and well-being support, primarily for people who were in the health service or at the front lines and really bombarded with the impacts of the pandemic. And that's a really stressful situation for everybody, obviously. Seeing all this suffering and all this in some case fatalities. So they launched this service, and they supported in the first phase of that over 1,000 people who are working in that sort of environment. And they did what they could do. They used what they had. So they were, they had a form on a website that generated an email that went to an inbox that somebody had to go and copy and paste out into an Excel spreadsheet, and then they had to consolidate all this stuff. So it was what you would expect from an organisation that doesn't really have the technology expertise and is trying to do something really important really quickly. So the good news about the service is that the impact it's had has been fantastic. So 98% of the people who responded to the survey said it had helped improve their well-being and their mental health. Fantastic. So they decided to open it up to the public at large. And they did that about 18 months ago, and they've had a 450% increase in the number of people using the service in next to no time. Now that's a real problem if you're using systems that are unscalable and very manual. But of course, if you don't have the skills or the money to do anything about it, then that's a real problem. And that also reflects a situation which all charities are facing, that there's an increasing demand for their services and there's less and less money to pay for it. The funding climate is getting harder and harder. And so that's where technology can be one of the few things that can really make a transformational difference to that. So the work we're doing with the Barclays staff here who are volunteering through their scheme and SAMH is to say, all right, let's look at all the steps in that process and let's just take one at a time and let's see if we can automate it, we can digitize it, and thereby give them the capacity to be able to cope with far more people who are looking for their support, reduce the waiting lists, without having to hire more people, without having to spend more money. So that's a really good example of the kind of effect that technology can have. Now, in that case, it's kind of it's digitizing an existing process. So it's not like a big app, one big app. There's lots of little pieces of work, and that works quite well in a volunteering context because it means it's manageable. It's bite-sized chunks that people can commit to. And that's one of the differences between the very early days when we got started and the situation now. So when people were on furlough, they had a lot of time. They wanted to do something useful. So they were able to commit much more time to be able to do this kind of stuff. Obviously, most of the people who were on furlough went back to work and, or got new jobs or whatever. So what we are very conscious of now is that this needs to be something that is manageable within people's lives and all the commitments that they have. We're actually doing an event this week, as it happens, which is all about returning volunteers. So as I say, we had this huge upsurge of people who started volunteering with us in the pandemic, worked on some projects, life moved on, and they've moved on and done other things. So what we've been trying to encourage people to think about is doing this in a way that is a bit more flexible. It fits in more easily with having a job and doing everything else you want to do in the rest of your life. So we're now seeing people starting to come back. And so we're getting that returning volunteer phenomenon. So we're doing a whole series of events this week, posting online, and we've got an online meetup and all that sort of stuff. So for all those of you in the room, you know, the skills that you all have, obviously, you know, they're the sort of things that are particularly valuable to us because, you know, we've got a huge range of different disciplines, different skill sets, a huge range of experience. And so folks like yourselves who do have that experience, and there was discussion earlier about, you know, one of the things that was on one of the very first slides that Jamie showed was, you know, he does this because it's an opportunity to learn things. Well, this is another opportunity to learn things. You can put the skills you've got to work, but you can also learn new things. So it gives you that opportunity. So you were asking the question about how do you get started. If you want to be able to demonstrate a portfolio of work, it's a really good way to do it, to be able to do something and say, I did this and it had this impact in the world. It's a really meaningful thing. And we've had lots and lots of people who've volunteered, they've worked on projects, and if they're looking either to, you know, start their own business, or they're looking to look for a new job, or their first job in some cases, the ability to talk about something like this is really powerful because people get really invested in the work that they're doing as part of this. So there's another company, again, based here in Glasgow, that we work with, and one of the case study videos that we've got is one of my absolute favorites. And the very first thing that the guy who's on the video says is, I had no idea how invested I was going to get in the outcome of this project. But when I saw what this organization was doing, I felt a huge responsibility to play my part and to do this. So people do these kind of things, they get really invested in it. And if you're going to talk about that to other people, that comes across, that really transmits itself to people. So as part of that, you know, developmental process, it's a really valuable thing too. In terms of the kind of projects that we take on, a lot of them are just requests from charities. What we've been looking to focus on increasingly is to find opportunities to do things that are more scalable. So, you know, we're all in the tech industry, right? The first thing you think of in the tech world is, if you do something good, how are you going to scale it? How are you going to make it bigger? So the approach we're taking to that is to try and encourage organizations to come forward with problems that, if we solve them, we can redeploy that solution to a lot of other organizations. Because if you think about the way that charities operate, you know, they will support people with a broad range of different support needs. But within that, there's categories. So you've got people who are at risk of homelessness, you've got people who are victims of abuse, you've got people who are refugees or asylum seekers. The organizations that provide that support, they tend to do it at quite small scale. I mean, there are the big ones, but there are literally thousands and thousands of small ones. And so what they typically do is they will provide that support to people within a specific geographic area, or it might be they do it for people, in the case of refugees, from a particular ethnic background. But there are lots and lots of them. So there's a tremendous opportunity. If we do something well and we do it once, we can take it and we can deploy it to multiple others. So we're looking increasingly for more of those kind of projects. So if you get involved in a project like that, not only does the output of your work support the organization that is initially being supported, but there's an opportunity for it to go to 5 or 10 or 50 organizations. So the impact it has in the world scales accordingly. And that's a really rewarding aspect of it as well. We also do some things that we kind of internally generate as well. So we have a number of projects where we've come up with the idea ourselves, basically, and we're looking to create something and put it out into the world. The very first one of those that we did was very early on in the pandemic, and at that time, the Scottish Government was publishing all the statistics about COVID online every day. There was, you know, it's an open data kind of approach, right? We're going to make the data available. We're not hiding anything here. And so what they were doing is they were literally, again, same principle, use what you've got. They were publishing Excel workbooks on a web page. Now, you know, for all of us, opening an Excel workbook is not a problem, but it's not exactly the most accessible form of sharing data with the public. So we found out about this, and we said to a bunch of volunteers, how about we do something that makes us a lot more accessible? So that was a homebrew project, as we called it. So that was to create an interactive visualization of that data, so that it meant that anybody could come onto a website and they could actually see the data down to the level of the local area or the national level, and all of it was available and much more accessible. It also provided some interesting opportunities for innovation as well. So initially, we did the typical things. So we made graphs and you could zoom them and all that sort of stuff. But one of our volunteers had a visual impairment, and she said, I've heard about this technique that's used in astronomy called sonification. So basically what that is you take a data set and you use the values in the data set and you transpose that into frequencies of sound. So effectively you get an audio file, which is the representation of that. So if you have visual impairment, you can now get access to that data as well. So that was one example of that kind of thing. Projects that we've got on the go at the moment, we've got one which certainly needs more JavaScript developers, so sign here at the end of the talk, which is for an organization called Dresscode. So I don't know if any of you heard of Dresscode? Yeah? No? Okay. So Dresscode, it's an organization that was set up by a woman who was working as a computing science teacher in a high school, and really passionate about trying to increase, first of all, the uptake of computing science in school, and secondly, the representation of girls and young women in that cohort. Now, you might think that computing science would be a subject that was on the rise. Actually, you'd be wrong. It's getting worse. There's this massive skills shortage, right? And computing science is available on the curriculum, Nat 5s, hires, advanced hires, it's all there. There's a real problem with lack of computing science teachers, and therefore there's a real problem with lack of uptake of computing science as a subject. So since 2001, the number of people taking computing science at exam level has gone down in Scotland, which is a really shocking thing to hear. So Tony Scullion, who set up this organization, Dresscode, she's been campaigning and working on this for years and years and years. Initially, alongside her job as a computing science teacher, she's now employed to do this as part of Mark Logan's program, the Scottish Technology Ecosystem Report and all the recommendations that came out of that. And one of the things that she came to us and asked us to do was to help with creating a tool that would help computing science teachers share what they call lesson starters. So at the start of a lesson, give the kids a simple problem to solve to get the juices flowing, get them going. And create this library, these lesson starter tools. So that's what we've been doing with Tony. So that's a JavaScript application. Lots and lots of scope for what else we can do with it. One of the challenges with doing this in a volunteer community is that there is quite a high turnover of people. So as compared to when you're employing people, people come, but people also go. So we really do need to keep refreshing the pool of people who can work on projects like that. We also do, we have another internal project, which is to create our volunteer app. So how do people find out about which projects they can work on? So we built a little volunteer app, which is a React Native app, which just lets them browse the projects that are there, and they can identify the ones that they're interested in. They can express interest in that, and hopefully we can match them up to that project. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavor of what we're about. There's a variety of reasons that people get involved. As I say, certainly pretty much without exception, there's a desire to do something that they find meaningful, that they think is going to make a contribution to the societies and communities in which we all live and work. There's certainly that learning opportunity. Again, coming back to one of the earlier points, there's the networking opportunity that goes along with that. So it's very much a community, and we're really keen to try and maintain that feel of a community and that interactivity. So again, Jamie was talking about, if you want to learn more, just come and speak to me. We try and foster very much that kind of an idea. And it's, we're a really small team, so there are 5 of us actually within the tech army as the business. But we have, as I say, this really big community. I mean, obviously not all 3,500 people are still active, but there are a few hundred at any point in time that are active. And what we're really keen to do is to encourage making those connections and that community and peer support. So again, coming back to what Jamie was saying, if you don't know, just ask. Somebody will probably know. And it shouldn't always be us. So that interaction between the community is really important. Great. So Guy Kawasaki, who first came to prominence as the chief evangelist for Apple back in the day when they were launching the Macintosh, said about presentations that audiences have only got 2 questions at the start of a presentation. First one is, how much is this going to suck? Second one is, how long is it going to suck for? Well, you can judge the first one, and I can tell you it's about to stop sucking to whatever extent it did. So really appreciate your time. Thank you to Jamie and the team for the invitation to come here. Delighted to chat to any of you at the end of this, and thank you for your time.
Anyone have any questions now, or would you rather across to Alistair after the session or at the pub, maybe?
Stunned silence.
It will be at the
Okay.
pub then, so watch
All right.
out.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Cheers.
Yeah, cool. So that's it. That's the first GlasgowJS done. To kick off the season, reminder, Alistair, if you want any talk about volunteering in tech, I know Kelsey and myself have done it, and I couldn't echo more that it is incredibly useful if you are looking for something good to do with your spare time, also something to boost the CV. I know that I got my first job about a year and a half ago, and part of that I think was down to the TypeScript exposure that I got from a Scottish Tech Army project. Juniors, loads of seniors, loads of talented people in between, so it really is a case of just pitch in. You're not going to be out of your depth, you're not going to be too good for everyone there. It really is a really big mix, and it's a very good experience. Talk to Jamie if you want to get help on your personal portfolio. Everyone who's been putting it off, no excuse now. On the subject of Jamie's websites, the mentorship program is now officially up and findable on scottishtechnology.club. And we've had the first few people getting into it. The ball's really rolling. So if you want to do mentorship, or if you want to get a hold of a mentor, go visit that page. You can see the people who've already signed up and get in touch with us, and we'll contact you. What else is there? October event. Speakers have been announced for next month, which is Kat is going to be talking about DIY linters, and Jaime is going to be talking about Tress.js. Don't know what that is. I guess we'll find out next month. Edinburgh.js is next week, a week today. Loads of... So there you go. Second opportunity to bother Alistair with questions. Thank you for coming. Most important thing, we will be at the Hootenanny for our classic post-talk drinks, so stick around for that. Again, to bother Alistair with questions. Thank you. See you then.